Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 60th installment of the Torah portion of the week. We're holding my Parshas Vayeitze. That's the story of Rachel and Yaakov, how Yaakov meets Rachel, and he ends up marrying Leah instead of Rachel, and he marries Rachel, and he has all these children through both of them and through their maidservants, and the whole story with Lavan. So here, an interesting thing, chapter 31. Verse 4, the Torah says, Yaakov sent and summoned Rachel and Leah to the field, to his flock, and he said to them, I've noticed your father's disposition is not towards me as in earlier days, but the God of my father was with me. Now you have known there was all my might that I served your father mocked me, changed my wage 100 times. So Yaakov tells his wives that, it's time to get out of Dodge. Right? It's time to move because their father doesn't have the same disposition as he did before. And God came to him, the God of his father came to him and said, get out. It's time to go back. Time to go back to the land of Israel. So he speaks to them. And, tells them, what he wants to do, that he wants to move on. So my Rebbe here brings down interesting. Says Mori Rebbe Rav Agon Moshe Shlita and Chochma V'das, and he says that the Shlach Kadosh, one of the great later commentaries on the Talmud, on the Torah, as well, he points out over here that this is the proper way for a person to take charge of his house. In other words, when he has to make a decision, let's say there has to be a decision in the house, and even if the husband knows that the wife, or in this case his wives, Yaakov's wives, would readily agree, you shouldn't say, okay, made this decision, this is what we're going to do, and even though he knows that they're going to agree, nonetheless, he should still take their counsel, he should still take their advice, and tell them, and have a discussion, not like, running the household with a iron fist, or whatever. They certainly have a portion, in the house as well, and therefore why shouldn't it be discussed with them? Now he points out here also that we know these women are truly righteous. They would certainly have agreed with what Yaakov had said. He says, nonetheless, it's still better, whatever you're going to do, to get the agreement that you should be both on the same path, even if you know 100% that they're going to agree. Nonetheless, you shouldn't go out and do it. You should take their counsel. Therefore, he tells them everything, and how Lavan has changed his wages, and he's mocked him, and all these different things. And he says, okay, all these different things are happening, and it's time to get out of Dodge. As they say. So the Rambam, interesting, says that a woman is commanded to honor her husband. Now, doesn't mean that she has to agree with everything he does, right? But if she honors him, he'll treat her properly. Now, as the saying goes, and he brings down from his mother-in-law, from Rishtermoch's mother-in-law, that if the husband treats his wife like a queen, then she will treat him like a king. Now that should be relatively obvious, but not everything, even if it's obvious, is what people do. Also, as Yaakov took counsel with his wives, gave them a part, which he certainly should, which everyone certainly should if they're married, right? That their wives certainly have a say. Again, things shouldn't be dictated to them, etc. So he brings down the following story just to illustrate this even further. and then we're going to discuss this in general, that he says, my father, may his name be blessed, said right after he got married that what's going to be in the house is that when it comes to spirituality, right, that's my department, right? That's what husband said. Spirituality is my department because I'm the head of the household, and he said that when it comes to Gashmias, when it comes to the everyday, bringing in money, etc. He's also the Baal Bayis. He's also in charge. But he said, I hope and I pray that the, bringing in the money and all the physical things that I'm in charge of will be for the sake of spirituality. And therefore, you have both. That the husband would relegate both. Now, you might say, well, it seems a little bit sexist. Why should it be? Why should it be that should be in charge of both? So he said, interesting, we'll break it down a little bit, that when it comes to ruchnis and spirituality, right, usually the husband sets the tone. And, how the kids are going to grow up, what schools they're going to go to. It says it's really his department in many ways. Again, it doesn't mean by any stretch that the wife doesn't have a say. Obviously, a person gets married, hopefully they're going in the same, they're going in the same direction. But, there's an obligation for a father to teach his son. Today, that's not so practical today, so we send our kids to school. But that's the father's responsibility, right? A woman, her responsibility is the atmosphere in the house, is taking care of the kids. Now, we'll speak about roles. We'll speak about roles in a second. But what my Rebbe's father said was, when it comes to spirituality, that should be my department, right? If you look in the Torah, that should be clear, right? That's really the man's department, is, the spiritual aspects. And he says, well, when it comes to, it says in the Ketubah, in the marriage document, that one of the things the husband has to provide his wife for is parnasa, his livelihood, right? So seemingly that he would be in charge of also. But what he wanted to say was that, when it comes to physicality, meaning, bringing money in and other things that have to deal with, the physical aspects of life, he wanted to say that should be an aspect of spirituality as well. In other words, both go hand in hand. So therefore, he said if the husband's in charge, or should be in charge of, the spiritual things, and the physical things lead to the spiritual things, right, then, that's what makes the husband the head of the household. Now, again, don't want to be misquoted here. People say, oh, it's sexist, women have no role, and this and that. So let's backtrack. Right, let's backtrack. So, when we speak about roles of men and women, so women, a woman was created from man, as the Torah says, right? God put Adam to sleep, created woman, from him, and as the Torah says, that she should be a Ezer Kenegdo. She should be a helpmate, opposite him. Now, if the marriage is good, so then she'll for sure help him. If the marriage isn't good, then she'll go against him. Now, even if the marriage is good, she could still go against him, for different things. Maybe, he doesn't act properly, he doesn't say things properly, whatever the case is. But in general, all things being equal, so if it's a good match, then that's the way it should work. Obviously, it's not going to be, easy. So when we look at the role of men and women, the idea is that they were created equally but different. They're going to say, how were they created equally but different? We see, as is brought down as is brought down that when it comes to mitzvahs, for example, a woman is going to be exempt from any mitzvah bound by time. Right? Any time-bound commandment a woman is exempt from. If she does it, she certainly gets merit. But, there are things that she has to do even if it is bound by time. Certainly for Ashkenazim, certainly Sephardim, the only question is, does she make a blessing on it? By Ashkenazim, yes. By Sephardim, no. So, why is it that she's exempt? Because she has other responsibilities. Now, if she has children, for example, and there would be the same obligation for a man and a woman to go to synagogue. So if that would be true, then they'd have to figure out a way, right? They would certainly have to figure out a way where you get a babysitter, he goes first, she goes second, or vice versa, right? If they had the same obligation, God would have said, you have the same obligation, but he made them different, right? They're physically different. Mentally, they're different. They don't think the same ways, in many ways. I mean, that should be obvious even when kids are little. You see little boys running around, and, jumping on each other, killing each other. So, give them some riddle and they walk around saying, hi, my name is Joe, right? They, to slow them down because, they run around a lot and, kill each other and everything else. At the same time, girls are more, much more delicate in that sense, and a lot of times they like to play house, play with dolls, make pretend that, they're the mommy and whatever. So you might say, well, that's what's been ingrained in their head. We should be able to change that. Now, can you have a girl that's more like a boy? Yeah. You can have, what they call a tomboy. Can that be? Certainly can be. It's probably not necessarily, in the norm, per se. Doesn't mean women can't be athletes. Don't get me wrong on that. Women certainly can. No question about that. It's just the question is what do they feel inside? What's part of their DNA? Let's say it like that. So their DNA is to be, like we said, when they're little, it doesn't even have to be ingrained in their head. It's in their DNA. To be more nurturing, to be more, more involved in the house, to be, to play house in general. Again, that's not a sexist comment. There's a reality, right? It's in the blood. It's not, can that be changed? Can a woman change? Yeah. Certainly can change. A woman in the workforce, for instance, women reach high levels on the corporate ladder. Again, you want to say they get enough money, they don't get enough money, etc. Nonetheless, they, they certainly can work at very high positions. That there's no question. At the same time, if you would ask most women who have high-powered jobs, if you would ask them, okay, at the end of the day, do you feel more masculine or feminine? Most women will probably say the working world is a man's world. But women have to work. Right? Most women today have to work. It's just that's the reality. Right? Very few women, can stay at home and take care of their kids. So, financially speaking. So, women who are out there, they're in a man's world. Man has the obligation because they ate from the tree of knowledge. So man has the obligation, it's going to be much harder. He has to work from the sweat of his brow, right, in order to make money, in order to, have a job, have a livelihood, etc. It was made much more difficult after that. Nonetheless, women are out there also. So if you ask most women, they would say even as successful as they are, it probably does take away from their feminine side. It just does. Because, things they have to deal with, deadlines, and, we live in a very fast-paced, world. And, things are constantly, changing. So, most women, who have kids would probably rather be at home. And, one of the things they did in Egypt, is to make the Jewish people suffer, is they gave men the women's job and men the women, and men the women's job and the women the men's job. So, imagine all you guys out there, a person that has a few kids at home and had to take care of the house while your wife was out. That was like, as the Torah says, it's called the Vodas Perach. It was very, very difficult work. The women had the back-breaking labor that they had to do, and for them, they're not equipped for that. Does that mean you can't have super women? No, it doesn't mean that. But they're not equipped for that. Men are stronger. They just are. We're not going to bring out, other cases where you can say, well, this woman works out, super bodybuilder, this, that, okay. There are cases women are stronger than men. In general, the way it is men are stronger. So, back-breaking work, which would even be difficult for a man to do, all the more so be difficult for a female. Now, does that mean you cannot change? Does that mean you can't feminize a man? Let's say. Make him help out more in the house, does laundry, cooks, right? There's more of that today. I'm not going to say you have, so many cases of, let's say, house husbands. They do exist. I don't know what the percentages are, but they definitely do exist. But in general, you put a man in that situation, you got to train him. It doesn't happen by osmosis. That is for sure. And the reason is pretty obvious. Because he's not cut out for that. DNA, genetically, he's not cut out for it. Can you change it? Yes. Boy, that's pretty controversial, isn't it? You can change it. You can work hard at it. But at the end of the day, women are more nurturing than men. It's a fact. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything out of the ordinary here. But if a woman has a more nurturing nature, now come on, you feminists, let's come out and attack me here. If a woman's nature is much more nurturing, isn't it better that she raises the kids? Not that the husband doesn't have any say, or he doesn't do anything. But isn't she going to be the one to be in charge, at least of the house, and how things run? Doesn't mean the husband should be oblivious. He should help out when he can. If his wife wants to rest and, he has to take care of his kids or take them out, he should do it. All things being equal. He's got to share responsibility. At the same time, his nature's totally different. So when we say his nature's different, we're not saying he's better. We're not saying that, he's got more rights because he's a man and he can dictate. So we see from what my Rebbe brought down from Yaakov, he didn't dictate. Even though he knew they would agree, call it a sixth sense, a sixth sense, or call it prophecy, divine providence, or not divine providence, but Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, whatever you want to call it, he knew. Right? And most men, probably know if they say something, whether their wife is going to agree or not. But he's talking about tremendously righteous people. So why would they disagree with him? Again, it's not just taking lip service and saying, okay, you say whatever you want, and we'll do whatever you want, we're slaves. Right? That is not the case. And sometimes people will say, well, women feel like slaves. Look at all the work they have to do. That's true. And if men had to give birth and do all this stuff, there'd be less children in the world. Clear. Right? That's not apologetic. That's the reality. What a woman can do in the house and, take care of the kids and do 100 things at once, men, can you train a man to do that? Yeah. You can train him, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be so successful. It's not an impossibility. It's just their natures are different. So if their natures are different, then you have to say their role is different. I don't think that's a big step or a big jump. It's not a leap of faith. God did not create them the same. They're different. If they're physically different, which they are, Biology 101, this will be rated G. We're not going to go down that road. But they're physically different. If they're physically different, then maybe they're spiritually different. Maybe. So this is where you get a little bit dicey, because then you get all these feminists say, why can't I do this and why can't I do that? I want to lead the services. I want to be in the public. Well, the question is, should women be in the public? Not saying they shouldn't walk outside, and go shopping and do other things. But women in the workforce, if you were to ask most women, I am sure, that, a lot of women will say that, there's probably harassment where they work. Sometimes it's more obvious, sometimes less. But, women get objectified regardless. So even if a woman does work in the workplace, so they have to be careful. They have to be modest. They shouldn't speak to men, calling them by the first name. Just call them Mr. So-and-so or Rabbi so-and-so, whatever the case is. They should keep distance. The reason they keep distance is to make sure nothing in any way, shape, or form will ever happen, because you get too close. When you work together for so long, so many hours a day, things can happen. And, it does happen. Not saying all the time, not saying that, it's 98% of the time. It does happen. It definitely does happen, because you have a close working relationship. So there have to be barriers. You have to set up barriers. Men, the same thing. I'm not just going to pick on women here. Men, the same thing. They work, if men work with women, they have to be boundaries. To make sure that nothing ever happens. So God knows the nature of man and woman. So we have to be careful. There have to be laws of modesty. Way we dress, way we speak, way we interact. So, women want to start doing, all these things that the Torah says is forbidden, that we don't do, that's not Torah anymore. It's what we call a feminist agenda. And a feminist agenda has no purpose in Torah. Because, women make the blessing every day, thank God you created me in your image. The man says, thank God you created me, not a woman. So people say, oh, that's sexist. It has nothing to do with being sexist. What's the blessing you say before that in the morning? Thank God I'm not a slave. Oh, you compare women to slaves? Only in one sense. Only in the sense when it comes to mitzvahs. Slaves are also exempt in mitzvahs just like women. In the mitzvahs that they're exempt from. So when a man says, thank God I'm not a woman, well, maybe he'll think of all the things that women do that you don't want to do. So maybe you're thinking in that sense, but that's not what it means. It means, thank God I'm not a woman, you gave me more mitzvahs to do. You gave me an obligation to pray 3 times a day. Right? With a minyan, with 10 men, 10 Jewish men. Gave me an obligation to do more mitzvahs. Alright, that's why I'm saying it, not because we think we're better. And anyone who does is sexist. That's just wrong. You can say, I know Orthodox Jews that are sexist. Okay, so they are. Doesn't mean all of them are. Doesn't mean half of them are. But again, let's keep this in mind. As the divorce rate rises, the secular world doesn't even talk about over 60%. Right? Even in the Orthodox world, it's rising. And we live in a very corrupted generation where people want instant gratitude. And if something's hard to work on, they don't want to work on it. So, change. Find it better somewhere else. But, my Rebbe brought down that you wouldn't have these problems, or these problems would be much less magnified if the husband's treated like he should be, and he treats his wife like she should be. In other words, if the husband doesn't treat his wife like a queen, he ain't going to be treated like a king. A person treats his wife like dirt. Why should she honor him? Why? Doesn't make any sense. So marriage is like anything else. It takes work. Even if the two are meant to be together, it takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work. Take a flower. A flower, if you don't water it, you don't give it sunshine, you don't give it nutrients, guess what? You can try this at home. It dies. Marriage is the same way. There has to be communication. There has to, be dedication. And there has to be mutual respect. Again, doesn't mean it's always perfect. Doesn't mean that. A person can say something he didn't mean to say. Could have a hard day, take it out on them, whatever. There are many things that can go wrong. And unfortunately, sometimes do. But at the end of the day, you're in it and you're committed unless there's something egregious that, you can't settle between yourselves. You have to get outside help. If outside help doesn't work and there's nothing to do, so that's it. Then you get divorced, but you have to work at it. Not something like, okay, well, didn't work, so, I'm done. It takes a lot of hard work and effort. And it's not easy even in the best of circumstances. Any number of things, can come up that can really put a wedge in. So, there are a number of things here. One, and this is crucial, and, again, I'm not saying anything that is, so earth-shattering new. It's just a question of putting it into practice. One is, there has to be open communication. You have to know how to communicate without stepping on someone. You have to know how to have a discussion, even if you're upset, and have a discussion. You also have to have downtime. When, your kids aren't around, or you take time, to go out or whatever, every so often. Also, within Judaism, there are family purity laws where husband can't be with his wife whenever he wants, right? Sometimes during the month. So there has to be communication, because if it's only about a infatuation, that's never going to last. And if it's all about how a person looks, then what happens when the person doesn't start to look like that? What if it's not as exciting? Or whatever. Then a person starts looking elsewhere. And that's always bad. So you have to have two things. You have to be compatible physically, for sure. I mean, a person cannot marry someone without seeing them. They have to be physically attracted. But at the same time, they have to have, things in common. They have to be able to talk. They have to be able to talk when they're not physical. I mean, that's a huge thing. Because either person can just objectify the other one. And, that's not going to last. Because once that fizzles, which is what a infatuation is, once that fizzles, it's gone. Trying to bring it back when a person gets older is harder. Much harder. Again, you don't look the same. Whatever, a lot of different things. So this is the ABCs, so to speak, of making a successful marriage. So the Torah outlines, and says that, Yaakov had proper respect for his wives, no question. But even if he knew what they were going to say, knowing what they were going to say and taking their counsel are two different things. And as righteous as they would have agreed. Right? Seems clear they would have agreed. Nonetheless, he takes counsel with them. Which shows that he has respect. And if he respects them, then they'll respect him. And if a person doesn't respect his wife, why should she respect him? So I'm not the head of the household. Like Tarzan, do me a favor. Never going to last. They're going to say, women are too modern today. No one has an obligation to be a doormat. And if there's a problem, it should be discussed. And if a person's angry, you should wait till his anger goes away. Then discuss it. Don't say, we're going to discuss it right now. The person's extremely angry. Right? The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, never speak to someone when they're angry. Let their anger dissipate. Then when it dissipates, then you can have a discussion. Right? That makes sense. Because if you try to have a discussion when someone is rip-roaring mad, they're going to slaughter you. They're absolutely going to slaughter you. Right? Never a good thing. So, regardless of how long someone's been married, still got to practice these things. Still got to make compliments. Thank your spouse for what they do for you. Buy gifts here and there. Don't have to be expensive, but to show appreciation. Because you could run on autopilot. And when you run on autopilot, it's stale. You're committed, and you're going to stick it out, but it's, if you were to rate it on 1 to 10. And if a person says, yeah, I consider my marriage a 4. Well, that's a red flag, no? Doesn't mean they're going to get divorced, just, they'll muddle along. They'll deal with what they have to deal with and move on. Again, doesn't mean they're going to get divorced. It's just, they're used to certain things. They're used to, being treated in a certain way, and sometimes it'll be better, sometimes worse, but, if they don't say it's higher than 6, many people are not going to say it's a 10. Right? Let's just say that. But if someone looks in the whole of it, what goes on in the household and, etc. He's holding less than 8 or 7. Again, doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. But you have to look at the bigger scheme of things. In the bigger scheme of things, you probably realize a lot of good things that you have. And if a person really thinks, you maybe have good reason, I don't know. If a person really thinks it's a 4, then make a list. Make a list, of what you like about your spouse. You can also make a list of what you don't like. But remember the good. Because most likely the good outweighs the bad. We just have a skewed way of looking at things because we always want it to be good. We never want to have, bad discussions. People feel bad. Whatever the case is. You want it always to be good. But it's not always good. Again, there could be heated discussion. Could be disagreements. Other things could be going on. It could be financial strain, which causes all kinds of problems. That are exasperated by that. There could be any number of issues going on. Problem with kids, problem with parents, someone sick. It could be a million things. See, but we don't look a lot of times at the bigger scheme. And in the bigger scheme of things, when you write these things down, of what attracted you to your spouse. And you look back, you say, okay, there are negative things also. No one's going to have it perfect. But if you look back and think about the good, the negative should dissipate. If it doesn't mean it's going to dissipate 100%. But when you want to ingratiate yourself to your other spouse, you got to remember the good things they do for you. And that you've done and the good times that you've had. They should overweigh the bad. I mean, if they don't, then, all right, then person needs help. With that. But I'm saying if you were to look in those terms, then you're going to look at it differently. You look at your spouse totally differently. Yeah, these other things will come up, they'll nag at you, whatever. You got to try and deal with it in the best way you can. If you can't, you have to get help. Not a crime to get help. We're very emotionally weak today. So we don't feel vulnerable as well. Someone, quote unquote, playing with our minds, making us feel things that we shouldn't or we do, or adding other problems. Right? That can happen also. You got to get the right person. But see, always got to be in the right frame of mind. And the problem is we get distracted. We are very easily distracted. We forget about what the most important thing is. And the most important thing is that we have to treat our spouses properly because they deserve it. Because they're with us. And you've been together for so long, however long it's been. Yeah, you want to keep it going in that direction. Got to work. It might be hard. You might have to go out of your comfort zone, which people don't like to do. There are times you have to do things you don't like. So again, you have to know what the boundaries are. You have to know what you can stand, what you can't stand. And if you can't stand it, sometimes you still have to do it. You can have ulterior motives for it even. Give yourself brownie points. Or you'll get brownie points for doing it. You don't even complain. The highest level would be you don't even complain about it. You just do it. Even though you can't stand it, but it'll be appreciated. And you want it to be appreciated. Doesn't mean every second you have to be patted on the back for what you did. But everybody likes to be appreciated. So you have to remember, you have to make compliments. Again, this is the Aleph Beis. These are the ABCs. But you know what? We forget. We forget. And we just keep doing the same things. Sort of almost doing things by rote. That's why every so often, you have to go out. Doesn't matter how busy you are. You have to take time just to do it. Minimally should be once a month. That's minimum. Even if you don't, go out to get something to eat or whatever, go for a walk, something. Because if not, you're not talking to each other. And that'll ruin a marriage. Might stay in the marriage, but it's just a shell of what it is. Because there's no communication. There's no downtime just to talk about whatever you want to talk about. It has nothing to do with your kids. So you say, Rabbi, that's so easy. I'm so busy and I work. Yeah, you're right. We all have busy lives. Wait, I think I had time to make this video? I can be helping my kids. Doing other things. Well, that's why I'm doing it. Get me out of it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we're all busy. We could give 100 excuses why. And they may all be justified. Doesn't mean it's right. Sometimes you just got to do it. You got to bite the bullet. You're tired, this, that. If it's not nurtured, it's not worked on, finished. Won't last. I mean, it might, but it'll be a shell of what it should be. Should absolutely be a shell of what it should be. And, one wants to go through life like that. That would cause all kinds of other problems. So you ask, is it worth it? Well, obviously, you married this person, right? Sometimes you see that people who could be married 30 years, kids are out of the house, and they get divorced shortly thereafter. Sometimes marriage is bad, and then we stick together for the kids. Now the kids are gone, nothing left, so they get divorced. That's the test. You don't want it to get to that point. Because, I'm not even going to go into about divorce and what it does to the family. Yeah, I understand. A person in a terrible marriage should end. All things being equal. You got help, it didn't help, this, that. Maybe it's mental illness, other things. It depends what it is. We're only in this world once, at least in this form. So if it's on a daily basis, you want to make the most of it. Again, doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. Life is far from perfect. Even the ones that have all the money, they have all kinds of other issues. Right? Life is definitely far from perfect. So we're going to make it to the best of our ability. But when it comes to a spouse, think. When you write in your list of things you like about the spouse, think about what it would be like if not. They didn't have that spouse. Some people say, it'd be much better. A person may be delusional. May think, it might be better. I mean, in some cases maybe it will be, but, you don't want to think that something's better. This is who you married. Right? And hopefully we made the right choice when we did get married. So the longer a person's married, the harder you have to work in a certain way. Because once you go on automatic pilot, it's okay. You try not to damage them, they try not to damage you, and, it's not so great. Not a great thing to be in. But you're in it. You have kids now, you have much more responsibility. Doesn't mean you don't love the other person. We're not saying that. We're just saying you get lost in the everyday, and the spark seems to fizzle. So, you got to renew it. You have to make it as strong as you can. But it takes work. And an important thing is the person has to want to give. He doesn't want to just take, he has to give. And even if you have to give, you want to give with a full heart. But you tell me I have to leave my comfort zone. Sometimes you might have to. Sometimes you might have to bite the bullet and just do whatever you have to do. So if you're on a higher level, you do it, nobody even knows how much you hate being there or doing it or whatever, even if they know it. But everything's fine or whatever. So that's tremendous. If you sit there and grumble and you're moping and this and that, it's much harder. Yeah, everyone knows you don't want to be there, now you're showing it. There needs to be a balance. There definitely needs to be a balance. It's not impossible to find a balance. But you always have to be on guard. And the last thing you want to do, however long a person is married for, the last thing you want to do is take the other person for granted. Because if you take the other person for granted, they feel like, I do this, I do that, I do the other thing. And I don't feel you're appreciated. So okay, I'm going to stop doing it. Now you appreciate me when I stop doing it. So it's not true. Definitely do appreciate it. But if a person doesn't hear it, they feel they're not appreciated. But how can you say I don't appreciate you? Because people feel, they don't feel necessarily taken advantage of. They just feel that, I do all this and nobody says anything. No, you're so weak, you need someone to pat you on the back. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you go out of your way. Someone should say, thank you, you went out of your way for me. It's appreciated. It's not such an awful idea. But we forget the basics. And the longer we're married, the more we forget. That's why, it has to be nurtured. And you have to do things that, you get away from your house. Because if you don't, it can just get stale. And that a person doesn't want. Because then they could feel, what am I doing here? It's just, same thing, different week. Okay, you have kids in common, very nice. That's not a small thing by any stretch. But, you have to put your best foot forward. And putting your best foot forward means you have to work. And if you don't, plant dies. And when the plant dies, nothing to do. It's over. It's over. And then the whole thing crumbles. You don't want that. I'm not saying there's never a time for a person to get divorced. There are plenty of people out there get divorced. Probably a lot shouldn't have. But there's a question. They don't want to work on it. Certainly in the secular world, that's the case. But I don't want to work on it. It's too hard. So, find someone better. But they'll come with other problems. Right? Again, nothing's perfect. So you get rid of one set of problems, you get another set of problems. So what's better? Torah says, better man not to be alone. Right? If we wanted that, we'd all, we go through, fission. Zoop, up, there's another one. Hey, look, it's got my eyes, got my nose, got my forehead. Tremendous. Probably a lot more successful. But that's not what God created the world for. Because for men, for all you men out there, God created you like half a soul. You have to go acquire, so to speak, that other half. And how we meet our other soul is, our soulmate is an interesting thing in of itself. But we're lacking. So that's why a person has to get married, because he's lacking that. That's why the man gives the ring, because he's lacking, so he has to give. And if, God forbid, they get divorced, he has to be the one to initiate it. So you say, well, maybe he doesn't want to initiate it, and therefore he's going to extort the woman until she can get remarried, and he has to give a get, or a bill of divorce. And some people can abuse the system, that's true. Some people say, let's change it. Well, you can't change it. There's a reason why men have to be committed. And there's a reason the man has to give the ring. And he has to do the kiddush, he has to do the sanctification under the canopy. Because he's the one that's the most difficulty in committing. But he's the one that's lacking. So if he's the one that's lacking, he has to make the commitment. Once he makes the commitment, doesn't want the commitment or whatever, he has to be the one to break it, for better or for worse. So marriage is something invaluable. But it's also something, we could just sort of get used to in, like someone told me, said, I had a bunch of roommates, in my day when I got married, it was like having another roommate. I said, oh, you still happily married? Like 40 years later, still happily married. Spouse and another roommate. Probably knew that. Right, but it takes effort. Nothing easy comes in this world. If it's worthwhile, then you have to work. I also want to remind people, I also have an Intro to Kabbalah class which I give every Tuesday night. We're now speaking about how providence works. 9 o'clock Tuesday nights. I also give conversion classes that you can take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism, or Beyond Noahides. I also give classes to Noahides, people who don't want to convert, non-Jews don't want to convert. And anyone, you can take a look at my blog, orthodoxconversion.com. Anyone who wants to contact me, send me an email, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN, because that's how my father spelled it, at gmail.com. Everyone have a great Shabbos.